Welcome to the Awakened Human Podcast, the place to be for highly progressive yet extremely grounded intuitive guidance, energetic support, metaphysical tools, and higher consciousness for highly successful, ambitious, soul-centered visionaries and leaders like you who want to make a global impact and achieve your highest fulfillment by aligning with your soul's true divine agenda and your role in God's plan of lighted creation, and by utilizing your divine gifts, talents, and abilities from the higher realms. We do this by working with the non-physical realms of higher guidance, energy, intuition, and powerful metaphysical tools for healing and transformation. We understand that the real change and transformation that's being called for on planet Earth and in our own lives and our own businesses doesn't come from outside of us, but rather from within. And that the change that we desire to experience in our lives and in our world requires us to change from the inside. I'm your host, Lori Ann Spagna. I'm a best-selling author, spiritual catalyst, intuitive, energy worker, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, lightworker, and luminary. I have dedicated my entire professional life to helping thousands and thousands of humans and animals all over the world in service and contribution to the light, which is the expansion, the upliftment, the evolution of humanity, to awaken, to uplift, and to align with our true divine source, which exists within each and every one of us. It is my passion, joy, and purpose to share this information, energy, and consciousness with you. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing time with me. Let's get started.
Well, hello, all you beautiful beings. We are back for part 2 in a series of 2. It's an ongoing series. But welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. We're talking today about 5 archetypical patterns that you need to resolve, address, and resolve. And one way or another, it's actually probably might be 6, depending on how this comes out, but you need to address these. And if you don't address them, they're going to show up in your reality. Trust me, they showed up in mine. And I've been working on archetypical patterns for a long time. In fact, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, please do. It was a really great episode on the 5 archetypical patterns that you need to integrate and that you need to awaken and cultivate. So this is a similar kind of thing, but you need to address them and resolve them. Otherwise, they'll show up in your life. And when they do, they are not very easy to deal with if you haven't addressed and resolved them. And I've been teaching archetypical class for a long time. It's in my sacred visionary mentorship, and they still showed up. So wow, this is just a deeper look, and I think it's really going to be helpful to you. I hope so, especially if you're a person who has ever had challenges with either family, relationships, right? Because they show up in the patterns of the way that people behave. So if you've had any kind of challenges, family challenges, relationship dynamics with clients or students, or relationship dynamics even with bosses or colleagues, it's usually because archetypical patterns, this is just one way of explaining it, but it's significant, right? Archetypical patterns are at odds, or there are wounded archetypes that are playing out. And when that happens, if you're carrying wounded archetypes, wounded patterns in you, and I've talked about people pleaser, that's a wounded archetype that I was carrying, right? That I had to work through. Overgiving, that's a wounded archetype, right? Thank goodness I've been able to work through it. And of course, all the last episodes have been talking about that, but right now we want to talk about some different ones. And I had to work through these because these were part of the shadow that showed up in my reality in the last year and a half. And just now that I'm really resolved, I can share them in a whole different way. So first, you all know about the victim. I don't even need to go into this because to me, well, it is very resolved. But if there's a victim archetype playing out, you will feel disempowered and you will feel as if you were victimized in some way. And the victim has to be integrated, right? Has to be healed and resolved. The purpose of victim archetype is to reclaim your power and to become victorious. Listen to last week's episode about that. But anywhere where you feel powerless and or victimized, the victim is playing out. I want to tell you a really, what I think is funny story. I hope you will find this funny. So, all right. So when I got on the road to start traveling and find my new home, the first night that I arrived in North Carolina, I had gone through, Georgia for quite a few nights. And then the first place I got to was a mountain town outside of Asheville. And I got there, and that first night there was a terrible windstorm. In fact, it was all over the news. And this windstorm was like deadly winds. Anyway, I'm in my whatever it was, vacation rental. And for the 2 days I was traveling, 2 days or few days, more than 2 days, I was just really going over the part of me that had felt so disempowered. And I was talking about that with my team. Like, how did I get to this point where I feel so disempowered? That's not like me. What happened here? And I just kept saying it to my team. Like, I just feel so disempowered. This is not me, right? I've been so in my power my whole life. It's all about reclaiming power. I teach a whole class on reclaiming your power. How did this happen? Well, anyway, here's the joke of it. I get to the place. It's the winds. They were cautioning people against driving. I didn't even realize, right? I unload, I get in the place, and finally sit down. I'm finally whew, I'm here. Yay. Relax. I'm going to start feeling better now. I'm in my vibe. I'm in my place where I wanted to come. And that night, the power went out. The power of the house went out. And it wasn't until I started to the next day I walked around the lake. I did my first video blog. That was one of the videos that will be on the YouTube channel. It was at Lake Junaluska. And I was still working through my stuff there. Oh, no, that was the second video blog. But anyway, I was still working through my stuff in the process of reclaiming my power. The next night, the power went off again. They put the power back on and came back on. Went off, went on, right? Windstorms. I'm like, how does this happen? How does this happen? Okay, it wasn't until a week later where I finally was reminded. Lori, you were saying for a week straight how disempowered you felt. Of course your power went out, right? Because the physical world mirrors what we think, believe, perceive, and who we are, right? So you got to address that inner victim, because the inner victim can feel disempowered, right? And we're not going to go into that archetype. I mean, it's in the full course in Ancient Archetypes inside of my sacred membership. So if you need more, but all about victim, when you've been victimized, right? When you feel victimized, when you feel like people have come after you or someone's come at you in a way that put you in a state of feeling like a victim. And it's not just about people, right? It could be the government, or it could be the storms, the weather patterns, right? It's so funny because I used to teach about this while I was in Florida. I'd be having hurricanes. People would be like, "Are you okay?" I'd be like, "Look, everything's fine here." I work with the weather. So funny, right? Because it just goes to prove nobody's ever above it if it's not fully resolved. It needs to be resolved. Okay. People who are victims typically get involved, by the way, a lot of court stuff, or they go to false authorities. They go to doctors, they go to lawyers, they go to psychics, they go to someone outside of them to somehow help them reclaim their power, right? And it's not until you reclaim it from within, which is what I've been doing, which is what this whole series of all these podcasts have been about, including the video blogs. But I hope that makes sense to you, right? I'm not spending a ton of time on it, but that archetype, right? It exists all over humanity. Anywhere where you're physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually bereft, financially bereft, or, in a space of lack or limitation, physical, emotional, mental, energetic upsets, upheavals, relationship upheavals, that's where you feel victimized. That has to be addressed and resolved, right? Okay. Next one, slave driver. Of course, right? And we all on earth have an inner, not everybody has an inner slave driver, but we've all been wired into a planetary system where you have to work for money, right? The new paradigm is not about working for money. It's about sharing joy, sharing service contribution that makes you feel fulfilled. That's your part of your highest calling that feels so good to share, and that you are compensated in a divinely right and aligned way. But that old paradigm of slave driver, having to work for money or work to survive, it's really deeply embedded in humanity, right? So you need to work through that so that it's not running your show. And I will tell you, when that Saturn return comes, if you've listened to the podcast, I've been talking about this, it will bring out, because Saturn is the taskmaster, potentially master, or else it's going to teach you where you need to go on vacation, which is ultimately kind of what I've been doing, restoring balance, right? But you got to address that part of you that's working for money rather than joy, the joy of contributing. Yeah. All right. And I'm breezing through these because it's a podcast, not a whole class. But of course, again, they are covered in the full class inside of Sacred Membership. Okay, here's the ones that threw me this year.